IDK just dropped his new album, You See For Yourself. It's his second studio album. It's another concept album, and he's been doing a lot of these over the course of his career, and it's interesting to see how much he can pack into a 17-song track list. So before we actually get into the review, guys, let us know in the comments your favorite songs from this album, and we do reviews here on the weekly, so stay tuned for more and subscribe if you haven't already.
Absolutely, and this is an action-packed night for music. I mean, we have new Vince Staples, we have new Logic. There's a lot of stuff coming out, so I'm very happy to receive this. I always like new concept albums because it allows me to dive into a whole different universe and something that, you know, progressively gets better throughout the track list, and then you only start understanding the full concept towards the end of the track list. So, you know, just before we actually dive into all these ratings, what was the one expectation you had for this new IDK album?
I definitely expected it to be concept-based, especially that, you know, he had previously announced that this was going to be kind of a continuation of Is He Real, which he dropped in 2019. And what he actually did is that if you look at every single song on Is He Real, the last letter of each song title actually spells out
The album title.
The album title for this album, You See For Yourself. So it's cool how he kind of made that artistic decision, and to see it kind of come full circle and to see kind of what that album title represents later on was very dope. If you guys are new to our channel, the way that we actually break down our reviews is that we have different categories. We have artist performance, then we have content, then we have features, production, and instant replay, right? Which is kind of, you know, how the album's sitting with us and how much we think we're going to revisit in the future. And we do it on a scale of bad, mid, good, amazing, and then perfect, just to kind of not use the numerical scale, which is kind of basic at this point.
Yeah, it's a bit weird, you know, judging art on a numerical basis.
Yeah.
But listen, people could do what they want. We do it a bit differently here. So
and let us know how you score the album based on our rating. If it's a perfect album, amazing, good, you guys let us know in the comments. But without further ado, man, let's get into the artist performance. How did you think he performed on this one?
Well, this is the thing, is that I'd gone through previous IDK albums, and it's very nice because the way he's able to the way he allows you to enter his universe is very, 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 very smooth. I feel as if the way that he sets up his imagery in this album and the way that he allows you to understand certain situations is really nice. So, example, on something like Dogs Don't Lie, it has a much meaner and a much more aggressive approach to his delivery. Like, you know, he's using, you know, he's a bit more fast-paced in his delivery, and, you know, he's a bit more aggressive with his tone. But example, then we go on to something like Puerto Rico, he delivers something more melodic and more on the R&B side. So I also, like, really enjoyed the duality in his artistry on that end. I also love how he's able to come in and, you know, kind of set the tone at the beginning of a track. So example, on something like, you know, 10 Feet wasn't maybe my most favorited song on the whole track list, but the way that he was able to sort of set up the mood at first and the way that he was able to guide you into the song was really nice. Even something like 1995. I mean, his writing was absolutely phenomenal on this album, and I'm going to talk about the content on that further when we get to the next category, but I was a big fan of the way that he was able to set up this album and the way he executed it, because it was a very complex message, but he was able to break it down with ease for me and, you know, smoothly transition me in. And the thing is that, you know, I know because we had spoken about this at the beginning, you know, before doing this review, we're going to have kind of different ratings for this album.
Yeah, we kind of have different views on this. But I mean, speaking on the artist performance, I'm always rooting for IDK, especially the fact that, you know, he's an independent artist and that, you know, he turned down a deal to sign with Kanye West's Good Music. It just shows a lot of confidence, and that's kind of the main essence that I got out of this track list, is him being confident in who he is and kind of seeing his self-growth kind of progress. That was really cool. But in terms of his rapping, very on point, very nice flow switches, charismatic delivery as well. Apart from that, I mean, like you were saying on Puerto Rico, that's one of his best hooks ever, and that proved to me, like, if he wanted to, he can make a full-on R&B album and
it would sound fantastic.
It would sound great. So overall, I mean, besides a few corny bars, which I may or may not refer to later, for the most part, his energy was right. I like how emotional he got also on, you know, the second half of the track list, and just a lot of raw energy from him, and it was good overall.
I also think that, you know, the way that he was able to transition from, you know, the first half of the track list to the end of the track list was really nice, because as I had mentioned before, you know, you start off with, let's say, Santa Monica Boulevard or Dogs Don't Lie. It's a lot more of an aggressive, more cocky flow. Like, you know, he's projecting his arrogance. Then, you know, you get onto something like 1995 or Hey Auntie. It's a lot more vulnerable and has a lot more meaning and deeper messages to it.
Similar to like Tyron, which dropped, you know, from Slow Tie this year, where the first half of the track list has a certain energy and the second one has a different energy. So seeing that duality is always a W for me. Something else that was kind of a standout in terms of his performance came actually on the song. Hold on, I have it here. Which song was it?
Second half.
It was on Red. So
Red was fire.
He had this seamless flow switch which was disgusting, man, for how good it was. So he raps, till it's time to pet the pussy like purr, fecto, her fur retro. Just the wordplay there and the way that he's able to transition, using certain words. It was really well done. So to me, if I'm going to rate the artist performance overall, I'd give it a good rating. The duality was there, but nothing that really blew me out of the water in terms of lyricism per se.
I would go with an amazing rating. I mean, this is where we're going to start seeing a difference in our ratings. And for me, it's just because he was able to really guide a coherent message throughout this album. Like, obviously, like, you're not probably going to get the most complex rhyme schemes with IDK or, something that's like, off a fucking Jay Electronica verse.
But he's capable of that, though.
He is capable of it. But I find like this was his delivery and his artist performance was attributed to the fact that he was trying to get this concept off, and he really did it with me. And like, I only realized it once I got towards the other half of the album. I was like, whoa, okay, he really just did that. Because another thing that he was able to do well for me was like, he kind of made me understood why he delivered certain songs on the track list. Example, like something like, PradadaBang, example with Young Thug, and something like, wait, let me go back to the track list. Dogs Don't Lie. Like, I'm going to refer back to that half of the track list. I understand why those tracks were there and why he delivered them in that way. And it was also because like he was also trying to project like this masculine, like I would say here, I have it right here. Hold on a second. Let me put this
hyper masculinity.
Yeah, that's like something that I had found like he was trying to project, because in the interview that he did back in April, he had said like, that was something that had caused me to fall into like the hyper masculinity, because of certain things in my childhood, which we're going to get into the content. So that's why I think I have to give it an amazing rating. He delivered it perfectly for me, and well, not perfectly, amazing. And
yeah,
we'll see what else goes on with it.
Let's dive into the content here, which I think is probably the strongest and maybe also the weakest aspect of the entire album. So I do love what he did, especially on the latter end. And I do get that like the beginning tracks, let's say like Santa Monica Boulevard or something like PradadaBang, I mean, those songs are kind of meant to set up the way that he views relationships in today's current society. So he's kind of using his success as armor and not letting anybody in terms of, his actual relationships, and talking about how a lot of women that are around him now are only, with him for his money, and that he'll take it for the sex aspect of it, but deep down the line, he can't, see himself having a relationship with these women. So it was cool to see him kind of be more braggadocious and talk, about kind of the, I would say, the fake aspects of of the relationships he's encountering. But it wasn't really until, I would say, 1995 that the full thematic scope of the album really took shape for me.
Yeah, and the reason why I think that happened is because there were certain events that probably needed to be cleared out and aired until that situation happened, because I like the way that it followed stuff in chronological order. Like, he had sort of exposed all these emotions that he was feeling. So as you said, like not being able to, have real trust within a woman and kind of second guessing everyone around him. Because another big message that I'd gotten throughout the first half of the track was like, he doesn't necessarily even enjoy being a celebrity at this point because of all the fake people around him and, all the social media tactics that come with it, and how everyone's kind of masking themselves in order to, get to a certain point. Everyone has these agendas, and he's kind of moving on his own and, trying to stay independent. So I feel as if that was also a byproduct of the end of the album, because towards the end of the album, you find out that he didn't necessarily have the best upbringing as a kid. He talks about how he comes from a home that was, how like his parents were immigrants, and how there was a different mentality back then, how, you had to be a doctor and you couldn't necessarily have room for any more creativity in your life, and how maybe his mom didn't necessarily show him affection towards him, and more so towards religion and law and order, and then how his stepdad basically didn't give a fuck about him, and how that caused those trust issues early on. So the way I was able to connect with was like, okay, the first half of the track list was exposing all those emotions. The end of the track list in songs like 1995 and Hey Auntie were the explanations for those emotions, and then that's what tied over the whole theme for me, and
True,
that's why
but
I like
feel like if you look at, let's say, a song like 10 Feet, or there was even that kind of song that was kind of it felt like a club song, I would say, that was produced by the Neptunes. What was that one called? Was it Feto, I think? Feto?
I believe it was Keto.
Keto, that's the one.
I believe
yes.
it was Keto.
So as good as those songs were, like, I didn't really see them having a use in the track list. So to me, that's kind of a negative, because it's like he could have still gotten off the same theme and that same idea of him kind of having those trust issues with women with fewer tracks for that first half of the album. But what he did later on was truly impactful, because I feel like he gave us an inside look about how he had issues kind of growing into the man that he is today, because he was never really shown affection or any love as a kid. I mean, obviously his mom passed away, and that's something that seriously affected him, and he mentions that on the album. But I mean, if you look at a song like Hey Auntie, the first like verse on that song is him having a fantasy of what he wanted his childhood home to be like.
And then the second verse is what actually ended up going down and how it affected his life. Like, that's what I found genius about the concept, is like he was always giving like me these parallels to, like, you know, guess the content, like guess how you feel about it. And another thing I like about him is that he had also mentioned that this album was sort of created with like a 3D sort of vision, where there's not necessarily one sort of message to this project, and that there's not one sort of coherent, like, let's say, path towards it. Like, there's so many different things to take out of it. And I want to go back to the point that you had made about I believe it was Keto and 10 Feet. I agree with you. Like, they obviously didn't, you know, they didn't have the strongest place in the overall sort of nuance of the album, but it wasn't something where I felt as if like, oh, okay, like these won't be nice. Because the thing is for me, I sort of saw it more as like, he's independent and he's probably trying to get off his club bangers on this stuff.
That's true, yeah.
So like, I didn't necessarily hold him to it. I was like, okay, you know what? At least I have like, at least it's placed there. Like, it's placed like subtly within the track list, and then right after Keto, you get 1995. So I was like, okay, I could go with it.
Either way, it did feel like he had fun on those tracks. So like,
it was nice. It was really,
it was dope. You know what I mean?
He did his thing, and like, that's why I think overall, at least in my opinion, the content is amazing. You know, the way that I was able to go from start to finish, the connections I had made, the fact that you could grab so many different thematic bases out of this. Like, there's a lot of stuff to take out of, and especially just, you know, being a fan of hip hop music in general, I love it when stuff has, you know, those loose ends to it where I could revisit it, and, you know, that's what drives the replay value for me, is like when I have to go back and read over lyrics or read over verses. So, you know, I was pretty taken away by it, and it had me thinking at the end of the day. That was another thing. I'm sorry I'm rambling on a bit, but I also felt as if I made personal connections to my own life, where I was like, fuck, you know, like sometimes I do underappreciate the things around me in my life, and I do see certain things. So I did really enjoy
Honestly,
it.
I'm kind of conflicted when it comes to the content on this album, because I really love a lot of aspects about it, but there's also some aspects that I feel kind of iffy about. An example of this, for example, is how, you know, You See For Yourself is supposed to be kind of, I would say, a view on like, because on Is He Real, the question was, does God exist? Because yes. IDK, you know, as he mentions later on in the album, his mom was really pushing for him to be religious, and for him to, you know, for that to kind of, I would say, fuel his growth as an individual, rather than, you know, learn how to love people and learn how to receive love too. So I feel like that question kind of remained unanswered. But the point of it, I guess, was that, like, you know, depending on certain life experiences, that will dictate if you believe in that higher power or not. But I don't know, I felt like he could have expanded more on that and on his own personal views. Apart from that, I mean, it was very deep. You got some of his most, you know, emotional lyrics ever. But to me, it was good just because I can't give it that amazing rating. It didn't feel as cohesive as it could have been. The concept itself is very good because it's personal. It relates to his life. It's his story. I can't criticize that. But I feel like it could have been executed a little bit better and a bit more tighter in the track list.
Even closure at the end of the the track list, like, ending was really nice.
That voicemail to his mom?
That voicemail to his mom was like, okay, I understand it, because it's also like, you know, the whole question of is he real gets answered with this thematic basis. It's kind of like he's showing you why God may be real, but it's kind of interpreted in a different way. Like, that's the way I understood it, was like he's showing you his own version of it, of like why he thinks it's real and why he thinks that, you know, it should be interpreted in that way. And it's kind of like, it tells you to interpret it in your own way. Like, I'm not sure if that makes sense to you. Like, it's a big mind fuck at the end of the day, but that's why I enjoyed the content so much. Is like, there's so many unanswered questions. But listen, let's move on to the features, because this is a very important aspect of this track list.
A lot of features on this album, man.
Massive feature list. So how did you feel about that? You know, just seeing so many features on this track list.
I thought it was fine. I mean, I think that IDK is an artist that can work with almost anybody. So he did, I would say, have quite a bit of chemistry with a lot of these artists. But I feel like a lot of these guest performances led me wanting more.
That's very true.
I felt like a lot of them were kind of short-lived, especially if you look at that MF Doom I would say, bridge that he had on the song Red.
Which was originally Wikipedia.
I wanted that full verse, man. I wanted that full MF Doom verse.
I know he had 3 lines on it. It felt kind of felt like short-lived, but I still enjoyed it though, because like those 3 lines that he did deliver were super fucking deep. I'll go back and actually read them out, because I was thinking about this like while I finished off the album, and it was like, hold on, he started off like, damn, showboating getting greedier, doing shows for feds on social media, Wikipedia. So it was like, okay, that's like those 3 lines on those album, low key, like really drove the features for me. And like I was like, okay, fuck it, he could take what he wants.
What do you think that speaks to? You think it speaks to like kind of, I would say, maybe hip hop culture and how certain artists,
the entertainment business. It's like everyone's putting on a show online, but they're low-key getting clipped, and like it's bringing them down. You know?
Yeah, it's kind of like they're self-snitching in a way, right?
Well, more
that's kind of the way that I
regardless
interpret
if it's on the crime side or like the crime side or not, but it's just more like, why are you giving yourself up online? You know, like why are you exposing your whole life online and doing these things for money? Like you're basically selling your soul through doing that. And that's the kind of message I got. But then Jay Elect delivers a fantastic verse to close off the song, and I was really taken away by this because I believe he only delivered a 16. If I'm like looking at it here,
yeah, it was pretty short.
Real quick, but it was kind of like he was using COVID-19 and he was also using social media to project the overall message of the song, which is like, why the fuck are you guys so fake, and like why are you guys putting this mask on? Like why don't you guys live your life and enjoy things for what it is? And that's why I think I enjoyed that Jay Elect verse so much, because yes, maybe it was short-lived, but it was also really potent. So I do got to say that. How did you feel about Westside Gunn, by the way?
Westside Gunn was definitely good. He opened the song and he's rapping about the same usual shit that he does, kind of the luxuries within his life, being front row at the Dior fashion show. And his vocals are kind of the same as always. He has that kind of whiny delivery, but it felt nice on the production that was there.
Absolutely. How did you feel about Lucky Day on, I believe it was Puerto Rico? How did you like that?
Definitely added to the vibe and that kind of, summer wavy feel to the song. So that was good. How did you feel about, let's say, the more trap features as in Offset and Young Thug?
I'll start with Young Thug. I think this is definitely one of the best features that he's delivered in recent times. Like, the thing is that I've gotten Young Thug features and I was like, okay, could have been more, could have done better. But this was really nice because him and IDK also had some back and forth on the hook, especially on the second verse. They were going back and forth on a couple of lines. Not only that, but on, the way Young Thug sort of not introduces the track, because he doesn't, but the way that he comes in and has that subtle flow switch. I was like, okay, this gives me Jeffrey vibes. And then I was listening to the rest of the track. I'm like,
I felt like
he delivered.
Yeah,
there.
I felt like his first verse was kind of more low key and very simple, but the second verse he was playing more with his vocal range, and that was like, okay, this is a solid Thug verse. Like he actually showed out for IDK. So,
but the only thing I didn't really enjoy about Offset's verse, because I'm gonna jump to that now, was just like I could have gotten it. I could have left this off. Like this was the one feature I'm like, okay, it probably wasn't needed.
Shoot my shot, yeah.
But it did like lead to the overall sort of progression of the thematic, story behind it,
yeah.
Because it was kind of like IDK and Offset sort of showing what they could do for a woman and like kind of shooting their shot and being have that flair with it. And the thing is that you also understand like how that plays with it.
Well, I think it relates back to kind of how women are after him now, but weren't before. I think in that song, IDK's rapping like, women used to be dodging me like the Matrix, but now, they're actually all over me, and I don't fuck with that because they're just clout chasing.
I ain't got no money problems. I ain't got no children. Dodging baby mama drama. Oop, that's a close one. So he's also talking about how like certain times women could get you into certain bad situations.
About having that fucking status, man, and being able to go out in public where not everybody knows who IDK is, but a lot of people do, and then you get a lot of fucking fake love, and then you can't trust who you're with, so it's tough.
Absolutely. So like that's why I did add to the overall theme of it, but I was like, fuck it. Like, verse 2 could have been to IDK.
A legendary, rapper made an appearance on this, and that was Slick Rick, man.
How'd you feel about that?
Fucking too short.
Yeah,
but he still got into a storytelling bag, talking about how he was kind of made fun of and had a difficult upbringing himself, because he was cross-eyed and had that eye injury. So always dope to see introspection from Slick Rick. And I mean, it just, again, short-lived. I wanted more.
Yeah, there was only 9 lines in his verse. I wish there was definitely more, because the thing is that IDK is probably super inspired by Slick Rick and his storytelling. And
Yeah, definitely.
It was really nice to see him place him on this track list. It was just like, fuck, I wish he had a full 32 or something where he was just, explaining certain things and maybe added to the overall thematic basis of it. So now that we're over all these features, how did you feel about it? What's your vibe?
Again, the performances all throughout were pretty good. I also liked what Sway Lee and Rico Nasty did on the song Keto. But if I'm being honest, again, some of them weren't necessary, and I feel like the performances that were there were strong, but just short-lived. So I'll give it a good rating.
I'm going to give it a good rating too. I feel as if it did add to the track list, but then again, like I wanted more from, certain features, and I wanted to listen to, different things, and I was down for it. But I was really, really, really impressed with the star-studded fact of it. Like there was a lot of well-chosen features. Like I feel as if no one was really out of place on this track list. And listen, there was also diversity within it. Like you got trap artists, you got legends on here. You have coke artists, like you have, female singers, you also have R&B singers. So it was nice. It did definitely play into the whole album. It was short-lived on a couple of ones.
Yeah, let's move on now to the production. And the first takeaway for me on this aspect is the fact that the tracks were sequenced so well.
Facts.
And I love how the ending of most tracks actually is the beginning of the next track. That really adds a cohesive feel to the project. And I wish more artists would kind of, pick up on this strategy, because it really makes you feel like this album is a complete experience. Apart from that, I think the main thing that I noticed with this track list, which played to IDK's, I would say, advantage, is the fact that there's a lot of trap drums that complement his aggressive delivery when he is giving that harsh delivery. So the trap drums were really well mixed in with his vocals. That was something I was a big fan of.
That was fire. Also, I'm a big fan of the soundscapes on this. Like, and let's say you go to a track like 1995, super, super simple production, but adds to his overall message throughout it, because in certain instances, you need to hear IDK's rapping and writing super clear. And like, if he would have overdone it on the production, or, it would have been mixed badly, or the sequencing would have been done properly, it would have sort of taken away from the overall, flow of the track list. And speaking about the flow of the track list, this is another thing I love, because as we mentioned at the beginning of this review, the track list is very, I would say, dynamic. Like it starts off on a super high and aggressive note, and then gets more mellow and gets more personal at the beginning of it. And overall, something like that, like, really gets to me, because the production guided me throughout that. Like, I got something more aggressive on, let's say, something like Santa Monica or Dogs Don't Lie, or something like, PradadaBang.
Well, I feel like Dogs Don't Lie had more of a mellow beat, though.
No, I found them more aggressive. I found them. It was actually produced by DJ Daddy.
There was like a sample of like this female's vocals, and then at the towards the end of the song, we got like the drums that kicked in. But I found it was more of a mellowed out beat.
I liked it because the drums were hard hitting, and like I was able to be guided throughout it. Like I had my head bopping throughout it. And another thing was like there was a lot of star-studded producers on this. Like you had DJ Dahi credits, you also had the Neptunes on this, you had T Minus. So there was a lot of stuff in here. I was like, fuck, there's so many different types of producers, but it all sounds coherent.
Cash Money AP made an appearance too on the song Peloton. That was one of the best beats, man.
That was ridiculous.
They sampled the Stylistics, which is a soul group, and they sampled a song that was like 50 years old. And the way that they made it sound so fresh was really refreshing to the track list. My favorite beat, though, has to be Red. And I just feel like that's some real street gutter shit. The violin sounds so dirty, and it feels like it's coming from a band that's performing on a sidewalk, but that's still talented. Like it just had that very, I would say, raw and dirty feel to it. And it was kind of the perfect aesthetic for, for rappers like Jay Elec and for IDK to be rapping over.
It was produced by Illingsworth, and he doesn't have major producing credits, but he had done some stuff for Fonte and Open Mike Eagle. But there was also some other great tracks, example like Puerto Rico, where you also got more of melodic performances by the production, and you're like, whoa, okay, this has me like more in a different type of mood, and this is perfect to play at night.
The Neptunes were on one as well, man.
That's a crazy fucking club banger. Well, for a beat, you know what I'm trying to say? Like, give that to Tyga, and you'll see what he'll do with that, So that's why, like, I personally think the production was amazing. Like, for how diverse it was, how it guided me throughout the whole theme and the whole message. The star-studded cast of it, like you had DJ Dahi, as I said, you had T Minus, the Neptunes, you also had Cash Money AP. It felt complete, but it was also so unique in its own way. Plus, the sequencing was fantastic. Plus, in certain instances where you needed IDK to have his own and where you needed to be clear, it did well for
Again,
me.
I'm gonna give a good rating on this one. I feel like the beats weren't all that memorable, and I feel like, if you look at certain tracks like 10 Feet or even a song like Keto, which I mean that was an kind of electronic dance music and it was a club banger, but it didn't. This album didn't really give me a sense that that the production was consistent throughout. So that was kind of a negative for me. Yes, it's refreshing to have different kinds of beats throughout, but it threw me off guard in certain points. But the sequencing was very strong, so I'll give it a good rating here.
Okay, let's get on to the instant replay. So, how did you like it, and how is this album going to sit with you, bud? Let's hear this, man.
To start off, I feel like if you look at the bangers on this album, such as Shoot My Shot, PradadaBang, those didn't really live up to the same, I would say, hype and energy that I got off of the bangers on Is He Real if you look at songs like Lily or 4,200 Choices. So to me right now, I'm obviously going to give this a couple more listens, but the bangers didn't live up to the same hype. And if I'm looking for a really strong concept album from IDK, I would rather go and listen to I Was Very Bad from 2017 than this one. So for me, as good as some of the performances were, as nice as the concept came around full circle at the end, doesn't have that replay value for me. I'm going to go with a mid rating here.
I'm going to go with a good rating. The reason why I don't think it's amazing is because I feel as if this is also a very tough listen. Like, there are certain things that are going to fly over my head and I'll have to revisit back. But once I kind of dive deep into it and I'm going to get through everything, there's going to be, I would say, a good amount of tracks that are going to make my rotation. So if I just have to go through it, I think PradadaBang is going to make it. I think Santa Monica Boulevard is going to make it. Dogs Don't Lie are going to make it. Puerto Rico is going to make it. 1995, Hey Auntie. So there's a good amount of tracks.
Only 5 songs out of the 17?
Yeah, but the thing is that the thematic basis and the start to finish is what's really driving it for me. Like, that's what's going to carry this for me. It's not going to necessarily be the standout tracks that are going to, make my playlist or whatever it is. No, like, I need to listen to this from 1 to 17, get everything done. And not only that, but let's say songs like, let's say skits like Closure or something like, Temporary Love, like, yes, like I understand like they were also short-lived, but those are songs that are not necessarily going to make my rotation just because of the length of it or let's say the use of it. So that's why I think like, there's a lot to be done with it. There's a lot to dive into it, but it's just like once I kind of dive into everything and I kind of get it sorted out, there's going to be a certain amount of tracks that are going to make it, and I'll end up going on with it.
From what it sounds like now, it seems like you really enjoyed this album. So is it a favorite, of the year for you?
It is a favorite of the year for me. It's a favorite first listen. I have to say that. I got to give it a couple of more listens. Like I was able to listen to the album 3 times in total.
I heard it about twice, yeah.
And I have to give him more. Like, that's the thing. Is like, I'm going to go with an amazing rating just because I feel as if this was super well put together. The production was amazing for me. His performance was amazing. The content was amazing. There was good features on it. And not only that, but this is something that's going to stay in my rotation. It has good replay value. Like, there's no reason for me to go and give it any other rating underneath it. And yes, it's definitely going to be a standout for me at the end of the year. How about you?
The way that I feel about it is that, he kind of gave us this inside look on the emotional void that he felt because, of his relationship with his mother and how she didn't, I would say, bring him up in the proper way for him to experience love and to, also receive love. So the concept was strong. I feel like he gave a lot of emotion. He was, putting max effort into a lot of these tracks. But to me, the concept was just too loosely executed and didn't, string out from song to song. I do love the duality of the album and how the first half is more braggadocious and is filled with more, I would say, energetic, vibes, while the second half is more emotional and more mellowed out. So I did love that duality aspect, but overall, to me, I'm going to give it a good rating. Production was nice, but didn't feel as cohesive as I wanted it to be. Features didn't add too much, but overall, there is a lot of layers to this, and this is an album that kind of demands your attention as a listener. So
it does.
I did appreciate that.
It's a very tough listen, and it's definitely going to probably be one of the best concepts of the year because, I mean, listen, we had gotten something from him back in 2019. We saw how that, sort of stood the test of time, and now we're going to see how this does for me because there's definitely a lot more to dive into it. So listen, guys, thank you for sticking through the whole review. We're going to be reviewing a lot more, and you guys are probably going to want to check out our Vince Staples review that probably just dropped if you finished watching this. We've reviewed that, and listen, man, it's going to be a fun year. There's a lot of stuff to look forward to. Thank you for watching the video. It's always a pleasure doing content for you guys. Listen, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel because we're doing album reviews, and we actually have our series called Everything We Know, where we take you guys through the whole album rollout of the hottest releases of the year. Not only that, guys, but our Patreon plan is now live. You guys can access that in the bio. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you on the next one.